1, 2, and a 3, and a 4, and a... This is Dennis from Guitar Lessons Ithaca. A few months ago, I did a video on Mike Longo's Rhythmic Nature of Jazz, where he talks about putting 5/4 within a 6/8 groove, which of course can also be applied to a 4/4 shuffle. And I'd had some play-alongs. I analyzed some stuff in that video, and I also had some play-alongs. And then this is a part 2 to that, because I feel like additional discussion is necessary for my own absorption of the material and hopefully yours. So let me just give a quick demonstration of what I'm talking about when I say fives within a 4/4 shuffle. So you have like 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a gang, 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 gang. And just to recap my other video, it takes 3 full cycles of 5 to get the pattern to start back on a downbeat, assuming that you're starting on a downbeat. And so what I did was, because I play a pitch instrument, I did a sequence in A minor pentatonic, a 5-note sequence, and repeated it 3 different times, starting in different places, like this. You see that it goes ding, 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 ding. So this is a 5-note pattern. Then the same contour, like this, it's a sequence, starting on the next note down in the scale, and then this one, and so then you get back to the place you started after the 3rd cycle. Now, we're going to refer to this as starting on the beat. Like, this first cycle starts on the beat. But you could also have started after the beat, so I did that too. And then you could also start an 8th note before the beat. So I did all that. And let's go back and look at those 3 cycles, again, starting with on, then after, and then before. That's just the way it falls. That's the natural order of things. If we had started after, then it would have been after, before, and on. But it always goes in that order, on, then after, then before. So there are 4 places in the 3 cycles of 5 where it lands on a downbeat, and those are circled in green. Like this is on the 1. Like if you're counting in 4, that is. I know this is written in 12/8. So this might be a little confusing. But this is on the 1, this is on the 2, this is on the 3, this is on the 3. And then by the time you get back to a downbeat, the cycle starts over again. So with respect to these 3 cycles of 5, there are 4 attacks that land on a downbeat. And that's kind of few. And so if you're like me and you're looking for, places to ground you in the meter for this cycle, that can be a little hard. So what I did was, now bear with me on this, I did a whole different cycle of 5, which I'll also let you hear, and I called it "That's Enough for Dinner," because when you take this rhythm, gang 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 gong, gang gang gong gong, it sounds like the English sentence "That's enough for dinner." So what I've done is I assigned letters to each of those words. That's enough for dinner is TENFDR. The last syllable ner. I didn't want to put N again, so we didn't get confused with the previous N. And as you could see, within these 3 cycles of 5, there are 6 notes that align with the downbeat. That's a lot more than we had before. So I analyzed that, and I think it's a lot more helpful. And it's good to know that here's your on cycle, and here's your after cycle, and here's your before cycle. And so you could see that the 3 hits line right up starting on the first beat of the on, and then like the 2nd note of the after, and then there's none in the before. So it just helps you keep track of everything. And I know you're going to think I'm mad, but I'm just trying to help here, help myself and help anyone who needs this kind of help. I did another one called "If You Should Hesitate," and these are in my course on odd time signatures. We use konnakol, and we also use English sentences, whatever helps you feel the rhythm the easiest. And "If You Should Hesitate" is one of my favorite 5 rhythms, and it's the title track of the first song on my album, Digital Interfaith, because that's the rhythm. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you should hesitate, that's enough for dinner. Teddy bear, come along. Whatever English sentences I was thinking at the time. I assigned these letters "If you should hesitate." Now I know hesitate is not spelled with an A, but I didn't want it to be confused with this I over here. So So if you should hesitate, and then if you plot out where those fall on the downbeats, I put the syllables where it lines up. So like 1, 2, 3, 4. If you should hesitate, if you should hesitate, if you should hesitate, da. Like, and I said ta at the end instead of if because you need you need a consonant. So I'm borrowing from konnakol. So let's get on with the listening. First, I'm going to scat each rhythm, and then we're going to play it with the pitches. First, that's enough for dinner, starting on the beat.
1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a that's enough for dinner. That's enough for dinner. That's enough for dinner. Da.
Now after the beat.
1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1. That's enough for dinner. That's enough for dinner. That's enough for dinner. Da.
Now before the beat.
1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and that's enough for dinner. That's enough for dinner. That's enough for dinner. Da.
Next is if you should hesitate, starting on the beat.
1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a if you should hesitate. If you should hesitate. If you should hesitate. Da.
Now after the beat.
1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1. If you should hesitate. If you should hesitate. If you should hesitate. Da.
Now before the beat.
1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and if you should hesitate. If you should hesitate. If you should hesitate. Da.
And for Mike Longo's combination of 3 plus 3 plus 2 plus 2, I used konnakol, where I used takida for 3 and taka for 2 and takadimi for 4. And it sounds like this.
1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a takida takida taga taga takida takida taga taga takida takida taga taga ta.
And then when we start after the beat, in order to keep me rhythmically accurate, instead of doing takida 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 and then like another little ta before the cycle starts, I did the fourth beat as takadimi so as to spill over into the first part of the triplet of the first beat and then start on the second part of the triplet. In other words, takida 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 takadimi ta. So it gets me to start right after the one beat, if that makes any sense. Here's a visual on it.
Takida 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 takadimi takida takida taga taga takida takida taga taga takida takida taga taga ta.
Finally, we get to starting before the beat. Similarly, instead of lengthening the last beat when I did the after cycle, for the before cycle, I want to shorten the last beat so I could start on the third triplet of the fourth beat, i.e. anticipating the next one beat. In other words, like takida 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 taga da, right before the one beat. Sounds like this.
Takida 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 taga takida takida taga taga takida takida taga taga takida takida taga taga ta.
And finally, here's the play alongs. Hope you enjoy. Hope this helps. Let me know how you make out.